Hello, everyone. Welcome to live event number 65. My name is Jeff Rolka. Welcome back. If you were away last week, I was gone for 2 weeks. Had a little vacation from the live events, but we are back and in action. I apologize for being a few minutes late. I had everything set to go. Everything was wired up, all my microphones in the right place and all that kind of stuff. Good afternoon, JC's Radiant Ray. Welcome back. Had everything wired up, and then the 414 just decided, I don't feel like working right now. So hopefully that is just some, ghost in the machine little issue here, rather than some type of fatal flaw. I really like that microphone. And they're incredibly useful if you're a project studio person, if you have a studio of your own, which I think is an awesome idea. It's never been a better time to have your own studio. The 414 is an incredibly versatile microphone. Usually they come with 4 different polar patterns, so you can use them in many, many different ways. They're not inexpensive microphones, but you really get an awful lot. You get a lot for your money with those mics. And honestly, any of the various kind of model numbers that they have are worth investigating for your studio usage. Hello, Jennifer. Good morning from Fresno. Yeah, good morning from Alameda. Sadiel, good afternoon to you. And my vacation was very good. Thank you very much. It was a little snowier. I have a few photos I thought I would share with you. Natasha, welcome. Overcomer, good evening. Shivram, 1033, burning some of the midnight oil, not quite yet, but soon. Satwik, hello to you. And Overcomer, hey there. 704, where Overcomer is. 704. It's like a little further east than the UK, so like Sweden or France or Germany or something like that. Adrian, please correct my pronunciation if I've said that incorrectly, Rosa. Hello, Jeff. I'm Brazilian. Your English is very easy for me to understand. You've been helping me a lot with your videos. That is awesome, and that is excellent. I'm glad that is the case. Before I dive in here with the question, I've got my first question from Mohayam. I'm going to show you, see if I did this correctly. So hold on to your hats here. When you're hiking in the Sierra, you might see this. If you're looking off into the valleys, big wide open spaces. What I saw was this and ever more snow as I headed off into the mountains. It was quite a trip. There you go. I've shared my photos. I think I shared those photos with you. Let me know if you saw them. I don't actually know if that worked or not. Hopefully it worked. Okay, so carrying on here. I wanted to know what some good techniques are. This is Mohayam. To train the tenor voice to sing operatic high B's and C's without falsetto. Thank you. Well, that depends somewhat on your definition of falsetto, because if you mean an airy sound, like when you have that falsetto kind of sound that's like that, that is an abducted vocal fold. It's separated, and so you get that air in the voice. But, and please don't take my word for it, do your fact checking. The falsetto range of the voice for the tenor is at high B and high C. So when you hear operatic tenors, they're using the falsetto range of their voice, but they're doing it in a way that does not have the vocal folds separated. In order to do that, you have to make a good transition through the secondo passaggio, getting from thyroarytenoid dominant to cricothyroid dominant singing, chest voice to head voice. You will find lots and lots of claims to the contrary of that. I would suggest you don't take my word for it. Do your reading. The accepted international standard for upper register singing in opera requires transitions through the secondo passaggio from thyroarytenoid dominant singing to cricothyroid dominant singing, chest voice to head voice. There is a secondary transition, a third transition point. You have the primo passaggio, the secondo passaggio, and the next transition above that, which gets you to the high C. And in order to do that, you've got to keep the vocal fold adducted, ADD, closed. And so the fundamentals of that are all in the How to Sing High Notes video. It requires great breath control and engagement, and I recommend studying the Apogeo breath management system, which I also talk about and work on in the videos. If you're practicing breathing videos on my channel, you are practicing the process of learning Apogeo. And those are the things that will get you up there. Adrian, Striker Kane, hey, Striker Kane. Mrs. Webster, yay, I was wondering if we were back today. We are back. We are, if you check my Twitter stuff, my tweets, I don't really tweet that much. Every once in a while I roll down nostalgia lane with videos and tweet all kinds of videos back to the 80s and 90s. But when I took the vacation, I had a link for the Go-Go's Vacations, All I Ever Wanted, and now we had Aerosmith back in the saddle. Is what was the link today. South Africa, cool. Today is, how do I know when I'm supporting really, really well? I can only feel my abdominal muscles engaging, but I'm not sure whether it's the breath support or I'm tensing them on purpose. That's a very interesting question. And I think difficult really today is to answer, quite frankly, because so much of what is going to, it's a chicken and the egg kind of an answer, in that if you're getting good response from your voice, then you probably have good engagement, good airflow. If you're not, that doesn't mean that you're not supporting properly or that you're not getting good engagement. There could be something else. You might be gripping, or I know that you've asked a lot of questions in the past about tongue tension. That could be problematic too. All of those things go into whether or not you're using your voice effectively. Honestly, analyzing and assessing these things is where teachers, people like me, are incredibly helpful. Whether it's with me on Skype or with someone local in your area, ideally they're going to help you analyze those problems. But one of the easier ways to know, not easier, but you can kind of ascertain the effectiveness of your engagement. This is why I use a lot of short notes, particularly in the speaking range of your voice. The comfortable, very, very comfortable, middle of the road thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. When you can very nicely get we, it should feel effortless. I can sense. I think my mic is drifting on me again. That 414 bummed me out. I've really been enjoying that mic lately. And I know that the pattern on this mic is very tight. And if I stray from it too far, you won't hear me very well. But I also don't want to slouch. When that kind of an exercise feels very effortless, there's very little sensation of any engagement or anything at all really around the larynx, but I still feel that insistence, a persistence of engagement around my abdominal muscles. I'm also very aware of my expansion. To get in touch with that sensation, some of the exercises that you'll find on YouTube I've asked you to put your arms up over your head, and that can be a really good way to see how you are using those muscles. Oh, yes. Okay, so you did see the photos. Cool. Yeah, I hadn't used that functionality of my webcasting software. So I'm like, well, we'll see if this works or not. Yeah, it's really amazingly gorgeous out there. And, I'm a big advocate of unplugging and backpacking every chance you get. So that the Sierra, now that's more north around Donner Summit. I mostly do most of my hiking in the southern Sierra, the so-called High Sierra. And the views there are very different. And perhaps as we get later into the fall, I couldn't go down to the south because the fires had closed some of the roads there. So I headed north. But I'll have to see if I can get some photos from down south and show them to you. Natasha 705 at Overcomer. Yes, saw the photos. It worked. Brilliant. Florence. Oh, wonderful. Welcome, Florence. I don't normally show photos, but I just got back from vacation, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let me see here. Am I scrolling? Can I sing Breathy like Mariah, and is it healthy? Mobile trend. Great question. Thank you. Very interesting question. This is such a great return to the live event. I'm so psyched. Yes, you can totally do a little, I would call that abduction of the vocal fold. So you allow the vocal fold to separate slightly and you get a little bit of air leakage. I think it's fine to do that. If you're doing it only that way, I would challenge you to find a neutral singing position, what some others might call the natural singing voice, but I kind of recoil at the word natural in that statement. But I think of it as neutral. The exercises on my channel are overwhelmingly about finding neutral tone production so that you can have consistent results throughout the various registers of your voice. From there, you can then begin to experiment with abducting or separating the vocal fold, and that will give you that nice, sultry, airy kind of sound, which is incredibly appropriate in popular music these days. Like we really, and I would say in my own personal artistic performances, I would have to fault myself for not cueing into that sooner. But that's something that's very much a part of popular music and popular vocal performance. And one teacher once told me, and we were practicing it in the lesson, and I was receiving my lesson at this time, and they said, and they were having me do the exercises with a partially abducted vocal fold, so there's air leakage. And what they told me was, if you can do backing vocals in long phrases with a partially abducted vocal fold, you will be one of the most sought after backing vocalists anywhere. And the reason, the key to that technique is to approach it from a neutral standpoint. So you learn, learn to change the abduction of the vocal fold in degrees, so you can have a little bit of airiness, a little bit more, and then so on and so forth. And you can choose how much air to allow to leak to get the breathiness, but also consider the length of phrase that you need to sing so that you don't run out of air before you get to the end of your phrase. Overcomer. I have trouble pushing my alto voice above the piano. My advice is not to do that. If you're pushing, that's not the way we want to approach it, first and foremost. Volume for the vocalist is a natural occurrence of good engagement and airflow and alignment of the vowels. So focus on your airflow and your support rather than pure volume. Focus on the alignment of your vowels. And what I mean by that is get them all so that they can resonate similarly. What that means is that you can go and sing and get a consistent sound to your voice across all 5 of those vowels in a consistent volume. That is going to generate more sympathetic vibrations in the oral cavity, which gives you a bigger sound in bigger volume. I would also instruct the pianist to tone it down. Piano is a big instrument, very, very big instrument. And particularly, depending on your singing style, if you are singing in a vernacular style, meaning like a contemporary, you're in your title, in your ID, it says ministries. So if I'm wrong about this being like an in-church thing, that please correct me. But even in contemporary Christian styles where it's, the songs contain liturgical elements, but they're in the style of a pop song format, we make compromises in order to retain an understandable popular vocal style. An opera singer doesn't make those, they don't have those considerations, and so they don't make those compromises. As such, they get more resonance and more overall volume than your pop singer is going to, right? The pop singer is making compromises. Now, we can mitigate those compromises as much as we can, but at some point, you stop sounding like a pop singer. And a lot of these compromises have to do with aperture at the larynx. The larynx controls airflow over the vocal fold. So if that aperture gets wider and wider, and an opera singer is going to widen it to its greatest point of release so that they get the greatest release around it, the greatest airflow, hence the greatest resonance volume, right? If we, in order to change and to stay in the vernacular, we limit that to a certain degree. So we don't get quite as much. That's not a value judgment on my part. It's about airflow over the vocal fold and the requirements of style. So I would look to the pianist first. If you're not singing with microphones, then I would instruct the piano player to tone it down a little bit. If you are using mics, then I would talk to the sound person. Tadeus at Overcomer, hi Tadeus, South Africa. Mrs. Webster, welcome at Florence. Mohamed, you're welcome. My pleasure. Adrian, a video about drive would be very nice. Yeah, I believe you're talking about like distortion and stuff. I know I've been putting that off, but I will do it. I have a much better idea of how I want to approach it now than before. So, Andrew, hello. Andrew, your videos are great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mrs. Webster, sorry, not a Twitter person, except to check on my kids, but my son and I enjoyed your moon board. Yes, the moon board. I am an avid rock climber, and so I built a moon board. Yeah, little diversion there, but fun nonetheless. Certainly a different side of me that you get to see. Shivam. Hey, Jeff, I haven't warmed up since a month or so, and my voice is not in a good shape. Any suggestions? Practice your warm-ups. The warm-ups, they're not, I mean, they are warm-ups. I mean, they can help you warm up and get ready to sing, but they're technical exercises meant to keep you sharp, to keep you on your game. So you do your warm-ups. You got to do your warm-ups. I'm sorry. I don't know that there is a shortcut around that. Just thinking, there's a quote I've mentioned a few times recently. I believe it was Dean Martin. Whether or not you appreciate that style of vocals, I hope you can appreciate Dean Martin as a vocalist. And I believe it was his quote who said, in 1 day of not practicing my scales, I noticed the difference. 2 days and the band notices the difference. 3 days and the audience notices the difference. Our scales are a part of what we do, and I would encourage you to make them a part of your daily, emphasis on the word daily, practice. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be there. And then as you get more and more adept with those patterns in your scales, one, I would encourage you to change it up so you stay fresh. And two, you won't have to spend that much time doing it. Mandy! I'm actually on a job and I can't stick around. Well, thank you for joining us. Mrs. Webster's offering you a hug, Mandy. That's very sweet. JC's Radiant Ray at Mandy. Andrew, what is the best way to breathe in between phrases? That's a very good question, which I really, really appreciate. I know I spend a lot of time talking about this in my lessons. I don't know whether or not I've mentioned it in the videos or not. But the idea in the breath is to take it. Okay, so one, we have to give some consideration to the space in between phrases. If you've got bars and bars, like somebody's taking a guitar solo or something like that, then, relax, decompress, and do whatever you're going to do. If it's a short amount of time, similar to the time in between the exercises on the channel, for example, then ideally we're going to take the breath very, very short. It'll be a very short breath. You'll get it in part by re-upping the engagement of the expansion of the rib cage. So it comes in the form of this pressing out laterally on the ribs. And it will happen very quickly. It will happen silently. And also you'll retain some engagement of the rectus abdominis muscles and the core body muscles. Because of that lateral expansion of the ribs, we can retain our engagement abdominally. This means that we get a much cleaner re-entry into the phrase. We're basically at the ready the entire time. What that sounds like... I don't know if you can hear my breaths or not. I purposely got really, really close to the mic. So if there's anything to hear, you'll hear it. I can gasp to let you hear it, but that's not what I want you to do, which is kind of confusing. So there, I purposely put a little gasp in there and to try to let you hear where they are. I don't know. I suspect you can probably hear those. So you notice the breath comes at the end of the phrase, not immediately preceding the next phrase. That gap there, with practice and with consistency of engagement, you won't need that gap. But learning to breathe after a phrase rather than immediately preceding your next vocal line helps you to develop the habit of becoming muscularly engaged well in advance of when you start to sing, of your tonal onset. This is incredibly important because what that does is that means that the muscles are ready to go, they're engaged, and they're ready to release when it's time to sing. You're not trying to inhale and then quickly turn it around, get engaged, maintain your expansion, and start singing all in this moment. That kind of agility comes with practice. The practice begins with taking the breath at the end of a phrase rather than immediately before the next one. Mandy, I promised to ask this question. How and why do lip trills work? Thank you so well to extend range and in learning higher passages. Thank you. And you know what? You actually reminded me of another question that I'm supposed to answer. So let me take those two. The one that I forgot before I forget it again first. It was about efficiency and running out of breath in phrases. Or I should say, the question was, why am I running out of breath? I can't make it to the ends of these phrases. And I would address the efficiency of my phonation. Whether you are abducted and leaking air or you're pressing too hard, those aren't the most efficient uses of the vocal fold. We want as balanced a mode of phonation as we possibly can. To do that, we spend a lot of time doing short note exercises, even after you've got a well-adducted vocal fold and you're getting good alignment of vowels. So when you're running out of air, address the efficiency with which you're phonating. Are you coming from a balanced mode of phonation? Are you balancing your airflow and muscular engagement at the larynx? Short exercises help determine that. Higher up, you're going to use more air as more air flows over the vocal folds. So in that regard, you need to assess how frequently you are breathing. And there's this sort of myth that gets perpetuated that one can enlarge their breath capacity or learn to do these extremely long phrases by holding one's breath. There is no evidence to suggest that that is true. Not my words, okay? Not my words. Those are the words of Richard Miller. But what I will say is this. You've got what you've got in your lungs. And even if you can increase it by a few percentage points by optimizing your expansion and how you're engaging and stuff like that. If you can take breaths seamlessly and quickly and then re-enter your phrase without any noticeable outside effect, then you can breathe wherever you want. And particularly in the English language, where we have a lot of hard consonants like T's and D's, those cut off the airflow anyway. And so they create moments where it's entirely possible to grab a very, very fast breath. And so frequency of breath is something to look at as well. Now, Mandy, thank you for remembering. The lip trill works because the lips take some of the weight off of the vocal fold. That allows it to change shape more easily. The shape change I'm speaking about is the elongation that the cricothyroid muscles do when we transition over the secondo passaggio. So, in a vocalist who hasn't developed their upper register, or worse, if they've been squeezing and pushing to try to get higher and higher notes, then there can be a lot of muscle engagement in the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, the chest voice musculature. We have to learn to allow that musculature to release so that the cricothyroids, which are smaller, typically undeveloped, and then they have to then elongate the vocal fold. So the lip trill makes it easier to do that. Particularly as you get higher and higher up, that's when I usually pull out the super lip trill, where you're making it harder. And this is to create more subglottic pressure, more engagement below the epiglottis airflow. Because at that point, we have a fully elongated vocal fold, a slight amount of abduction occurs, and then we have the cover of the vocal fold begins to take on vibratory duties, vibratory duties. That's the falsetto register of one's voice, or in the female voice, the flageolet register. And maintaining a proper balance of adduction, abduction, and the dampening that occurs and allowing the cover to vibrate is a very delicate matter. It's easy to slide off the vocal fold and crack. And so we need a lot of very substantial engagement in order to make that transition effective. And the lip trill helps with that quite a lot. I hope that answers the question. Good morning from Hawaii, Stephen. Hello. Mrs. Webster. I love it that I come with my questions but learn even more from everyone else's. That's all you guys in the chat. I forgot to say that, by the way. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. It always so much great stuff that occurs in these live events. Thank you. Anna, hello from Poland. Dzień dobry, I think is that right? Dzień dobry, if I remember correctly from my years in Hamtramck. Frankie, I feel like it takes forever for me to get warmed up. I wake up very groggy. Any advice? Well, okay. So, okay. One, if you have to sing very early in the morning, try to wake up earlier. I know that's a drag. I know it's a drag, but that's one very easy, practical thing that you can do. If you're trying to sing that early in the morning, it might take a while to warm up. That's kind of the thing. What helps me do it more expediently is to warm up in stages, and it's very, very gradual, and it's a lot of and then I'll kind of take a little bit of a break, come back. I take it in stages, and that seems to go more quickly and less frustrating, and is less frustrating for me when I have to sing super early in the morning. Give me some more pointers on that. Give me some more specifics about what's going on, because I'm making a lot of assumptions in that advice that I don't know is necessarily germane to your question. Jason V, incredible vocal warm-ups, man. Thank you. What are the best ways to reduce tension and straining in the throat and larynx region? Great question. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know that we can really talk about that too much, quite frankly. Because on some level, that's something that we all deal with all the time. We're just in different places on the path. I know that I was doing some recordings this week I'm getting ready to. I'm about to release a new original tune in the coming couple of weeks, which is very exciting for me because I used to do releases not necessarily regularly or even frequently, but I was doing them, and I haven't done a release in a while, so I'm very excited about that. And I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit of engagement here that wasn't always there. If you are, it kind of depends on where you are on that path with your tongue tension and the throat and the larynx area. If you're really, really new to vocal training, then you need to address the engagement, your airflow, your overall breathing methodology. So I teach Apagio breath management. The exercises on my channel are directed at Apagio breath management, and I feel that is an absolutely transformative concept for breathing and singing. It is not without its difficulties, and quite frankly, it contradicts a lot of what one would think of as the common knowledge about how we support our voices. The so-called stick your stomach out to breathe in and pull it back in to sing. There's no evidence that that's effective. But please do not take my word for it. That's what I mean. I'm teaching Apagio on the channel. You're not going to hear me tell you to stick your stomach out. There's a lot of people that advocate for that. There's an old German school that advocates for that. I did not find that to be very effective. And when I got to Apagio about 10, now 11 or 12 years ago, and started to revamp my breathing to what Apagio actually is and got with teachers that could help me, it changed everything for me in the most profoundly positive way. But look at Shirley Emmons' website, look at Richard Miller's work, read up on it. If you do, like I said, don't take my word for it. That will go a very, very long way in reducing your strain and tension. Balancing and aligning your vowels will also reduce tension. Integrating that with the consonants, if you're singing in a vernacular, I guess vernacular is like the word of the day. I think I've said that a dozen times already. If you're singing pop tunes or, popular genres, then consonants and the way that they integrate with vowels can have a lot of impact on tension as well. So the lyric playlist, there's a playlist on my channel, like lyrical practices or something like that. And that addresses how we integrate consonants back into the vowels. And so it's a process. And then what you can do is you can take that process and apply it to the songs that you're singing. You deconstruct the songs and put them back together, and that will go a long ways towards reducing tongue and larynx. If you're further along in the path, then things like, volume management, pushing or not, slight increases in engagement as you ascend, and vowel modification as you enter into the zona de passaggio will also do lots for mitigating strain with your voice. JC's Radiant Ray at Frankie Q. Sophie Lewis, when I listen to my own recordings, my vibrato sounds way too fast. How can I fix this? That's a tough one. Because vibrato is a naturally occurring... vibrato will generally occur quite naturally of its own accord when you have good reciprocal engagement between the muscles around the larynx and the subglottic pressure. In English, when your air and the muscles in the larynx, your vocal folds, are working together really nicely, then you'll get this nice little oscillation. They'll kind of oscillate together. My concern is that you've got this billy goat vibrato, which unfortunately I can't demonstrate any longer. I've lost that one. And what you're doing with that one is you're kind of squeezing the vocal fold together to get a kind of juddering, like kind of a sound. If that's the case, you really need to go back to some short exercises, investigate your airflow, do the diaphragmatic warm-up maybe or something like that, or stick to the gentle warm-ups. Think limited range, longer tones, and consistency of engagement. The lip trill would figure prominently in this too, so that you can get greater release around the vocal fold and then get a vibrato that's more of a naturally occurring oscillation than a gripping of the muscles that's kind of feeding back on itself. Shivram says, same at Frankie. Mrs. Webster at Jason's Rainy Ray. Jason Rainy Ray. Mrs. Webster. Sahil, hello. Learn to read Urdu. Hey, Jeff, good evening from India. And good evening to you, too. Thank you for joining us. Mrs. Webster, you touched briefly on something at 12:18 about making compromises. I did, yeah. I did. I was talking about the compromises that we make to sing in popular genres rather than an operatic singing voice, which is basically the sort of point where like technical perfection and the voice meet. Again, this isn't a value judgment, but the operatic voice isn't an affectation. It's what we achieve when our technique graduates to that level. But to sing in popular genres, because we don't want to sound like opera singers, we make compromises in order to continue to sound like popular vocalists. And I think what I'm trying to do, as much as I possibly can in my teaching, is to minimize the compromises and maximize how we can use our voices, but still keep us in the popular genre. And so, my channel is an adaptation of Apagio breath management, of bel canto techniques, of all these things. The exercises and the patterns that I use are the same ones that you would practice if you went to a bel canto teacher. But I give a lot of thought to how can we stay in the popular genre while still having as released a vocal production as possible. Today, I have a bit of sometimes speaking with a bit of vocal fry. Is it bad? It's very common quite right now. It's a little bit wearing on the voice, and it's an indication of not ideal engagement. But if you're speaking with it, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If it's a lot, like if there's a lot of vocal fry, then you might want to engage a little bit more so that you can mitigate the fatigue on your voice. Mrs. Webster, can we discuss how to make understandable vowels and diction without sounding like a robot? I want to be heard, understood, but make the music pleasant to hear. I think that's a lot of what I've been talking about already. The thing about that is that the vowels, there's a point where the vowels and the consonants work together. The consonants are what give us diction and enunciation. So if you are having a hard time being understood, then addressing the consonants is part of that process. Alignment of the vowels will mean that you get consistent volume and tone across your phrases. So by having good vowel alignment, you get good volume continuity. Means that your voice doesn't change volume because you're singing a different vowel or a different word. If the consonants are, if you're singing into your diphthongs, for example, like if you're going to say, I feel fine. I feel fine. That's, you can kind of understand me, but that's not terribly musical. I've sung into my diphthong too much. I feel fine. You can still understand me, but I've stayed on the vowel, and that's a bit more musical. You have to give some consideration for those things as well. So diction is about the consonants. Alignment is about the vowels. Where they meet, again, we're going to make some compromises. If you're doing spoken word, you're going to enunciate, and I would say the onus is on you to enunciate quite clearly so that you can be understood very easily. If we're singing, if we're doing a vocal presentation, then somewhere there's a sweet spot where we're getting good enunciation, but we still have good enough vowel alignment and release of the vocal fold to sing effectively. That may come with some compromises on range. because as you go higher, we need to consider vowel modifications, increased airflow, and if the consonants are breaking off the air column too much, that can make phonation difficult or impossible depending on our technique. So, always considerations. It's always about considerations and some compromises here and there. Adrian, me too today. Pro Audio Rev TD, hello Giuseppe. Maddie, hey everybody. Jeff, I hope you had an awesome vacation. So excited to be joining you all this week. Welcome back, Maddie. Welcome back. I'm going to do a gratuitous vacation scene flash. There's the mountains where I went once again. Lots of snow. A little bit, not so much snow right there, but there you go. That's where I went, just so you can all see that. I did it earlier to do. I wasn't going to do it again, but I thought I'll indulge myself here. Jennifer, hey Jeff, will we be seeing any more singing with lyrics soon? I find those fun and challenging. Yes, I will be doing. I got so much stuff to do, video-wise. And also, for those of you whose ears have been burning, I finally found a piano tuner around here I'm going to go with. So the piano will be back in the kind of intonation that I think is more appropriate for what I do. Overcomer, okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Everything's correct pop style. Good. Karina, hello. Karina, a little late, but that's fine. Sahil, is Western music is same like Hindustani? Very good. A very interesting question. Oftentimes, in contemporary. So first of all, I don't know all the different styles of music that are there. But what I have heard oftentimes has what I would call Western tonal musical accompaniment. But then the vocal melody will often have elements of the more traditional music forms. So like when I've worked with singers from, I don't know if you're from India. I think maybe you did identify as being from India. I'm not sure. But from India, where they've used, like, there's elements of raga in the melody line, but the chordal accompaniment is entirely Western tonal. So it's not entirely the same, but there are aspects that are similar. Sophia Lewis, my voice teacher told me I am always singing a bit sharp. She said this is a result of lack of support from the diaphragm. Problem is, when I'm nervous, breath support goes away. That's really tricky. You know, anxiety can have all kinds of different effects on our voices, and that's incredibly tricky to deal with. I have done a video on confidence and performance anxiety or being nervous when singing. It would be worth checking that out. I've kind of got to speed things up here to try and get through all the questions today. For me, when I am dealing with performance anxiety, I have a mental checklist that I run through. And your checklist may be different from my checklist, but I would highly recommend you give that some consideration and think about it. So for me, when I start to feel anxious, I direct my attention downwards, and in particular, I'm focused on the lateral expansion of my rib cage, so that I have good expansion. That allows the rectus abdominis muscles, inner and outer oblique muscles, and the transverse abdominis muscle to more directly interact with my diaphragm and suspend the air column for proper singing, for proper phonation, for airflow. So that's what I focus on that works for me. It has the additional effect of really grounding me and centering me, and then helping to dissipate a lot of my anxiety. If I'm performing on stage, this can sometimes take a song or two. But the benefit is that even though I'm feeling quite anxious, I'm so focused on my engagement and support mechanisms that I'm still phonating properly. It's not ideal, obviously. Like we want to enter the stage and be in the zone, but we can't always do that. And sometimes things happen where, you know, circumstances outside our control can distract us from being in that place. Having a process can mitigate the problems that occur, and then you can get past that and start to get more into what it is to be performing in the kind of place that you want to be in. trying to achieve what I came up calling the flow state, which is a state of heightened attention, but also heightened release, confusingly enough. Striker at Maddie, at Mrs. Karina, and JC's Radiant Ray of Brilliance. That's so nice. Mrs. Webster at Shivam. Sahil, please help me. How do warm up? That's a big question. Start with some of the beginners playlists, really, or start with things that don't contain the words full range if you're new to singing. Those are going to be the most accessible. If the speed of the exercises is too fast, go to the fast and slow video. That starts really slow and will work you up to speed. That's what I did it for. Striker, what kind of resources can you suggest for new musicians that want to start gigging? That's an awesome question. I like that. And you know what? I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Goodness me. Okay, so you know what? The thing is that it's going to be different from area to area. So, like I really had the lay of the land in terms of gigging around the San Francisco Bay Area and did so for a long time. When I moved to the UK, everything that I used to do back in SF did not work at all. In the UK and elsewhere in Europe, there is, and it is available in the US as well. Well, it's called starnow.com. There are paid and free versions of it. I would have a look at that for starters, starnow.com. I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but it will, because it wasn't an incredibly effective means for me to find gigs or find work when I was in the UK. But it's worth checking out because that's going to at least make you aware of the venues that are doing live music, which in many markets now is kind of like a task in and of itself. It also depends on the kind of gigs you want. Like if you just want to gig, like you want to put a lot of miles on your stage show, and this is not for the faint of heart, okay? But you can try busking. Busking doesn't require much of anything. All it requires you do is grab whatever, if you're going to play a guitar or if you're singing a cappella, or I know, Striker, you of course play clarinet. All it requires you do is grab that thing, walk out the door, and, go and do it. I would advise you to check your local laws, enforcements, ordinances, and everything else around it, because you can be ticketed, fined, or your equipment can be confiscated if you are breaking the law. Do not let that happen to you, okay? So check the laws and ordinances, but there is nothing that you need to do aside from that to start busking. In the San Francisco Bay Area, if you wanted to put a lot of mileage on gigs, I would recommend you check out farmers markets. This is not glamorous, I can assure you. And I can also assure you that you will be competing in volume with the kettle corn popping machine. I've done untold numbers of those gigs because I wanted to put miles on gigs. I wanted to do a lot of gigs, and I wanted to sing a lot of songs, and I wanted to see how I could get people's attention, what worked and what didn't work, what made money, what didn't make money. It is so unglamorous, but in busking can work kind of the same. Used to be that wine bars and things like that were good ways to get gigs as well, but consider your audience. And consider your audience in all these instances. These people want to hear things that are familiar, typically speaking, and they're going to want to, and that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So you're going to consider cover songs. Getting gigs beyond that, we start getting into more specialized things. Like if you want to do wedding gigs, do you want to do service music? Do you want to do like the wedding band thing? Then you need a band, and that's a whole entity in and of itself. Cover bands, particularly in the Bay Area, make lots of money, and that's a reasonable way to make a living as a working musician. It's all covers, and they need to be played in a fairly true to form way. So it depends a lot on the kind of gig that you want to do. Does it have to make money? What is it about it? But there's at least some thoughts for you to get started. Shivram laughing out loud. Mrs. David Walsh, believe it important to have a solid passaggio, keyed upper range, but would you consider a video on developing the top, B and C for tenor? You know what? You can look at the extended range warm-ups. And also that range, I know it doesn't sound like falsetto, but it's called the falsetto range, and that video addresses that as well. Please, I know that word has been used to mean so many different things. When I say falsetto, I'm not meaning that light, airy sound that happens around a G above middle C for your untrained male vocalist. I'm talking about the range of the voice where the vocal fold is partially abducted, the cover or ligament on the outer surface area is vibrating in addition to the vocal fold, and there's an amount of dampening that occurs as well. That does not result by default in an airy sound, but it is called the falsetto range of the voice. It starts around B flat 4, B4, just before C5, and that, making smooth transitions into those registers is the accepted technique for opera singers, and it is what we also do as well. Just happy. Jeff, welcome back. When I sing and when I don't, I usually pull my stomach in. It's a bad habit for singing. Thank you very much. It depends on how much you're pulling it in. A certain amount of lift and engagement that lifts upwards towards the sternum and does come in is contrary to what is considered to be common knowledge for singing, but it is correct. I've tried to wear like tight form-fitting shirts in the videos that I've done. It feels so strange to do it, but I need to give some consideration for some way that I can film myself that can make it easier for you all to see the motions of my stomach and rib cage. I need like some like high contrast background or something like that. Because that's a very, very good question, and there's so much, in my opinion, misinformation, don't take my word for it, on it. I need to do that video. I really, really need to do that video. Thank you for asking that. That's a very good question. Anna, I have bed voice day. Give me some advice, please. Bed voice. I think perhaps you mean bad. If it's inconsistent, consistency will come with practice and attention to the alignment of your vowels and good consistent airflow. So focus on your engagement and airflow. Get your vowels in alignment. If they're not already aligned, stick to videos that are not full range. Stay out of the upper register for right now. Focus on the easily accessible areas of your voice and take it in turns. So, when you're working on airflow and breathing and your body geography, how you're orienting your body, give yourself a pass on the notes for 5 minutes. Don't worry about it. Focus on your expansion and engagement and how you are using it, and then try to integrate that into your phonation so that now you're focused again and you're splitting your attention onto your phonation more and onto the actual pitches and making sure that you're being as accurate as you can. The thing is that usually when we address airflow and consistency of airflow, the pitch and consistency improves almost automatically. If you have some habits around pushing or pulling chest voice and things like that, that's going to take some time to learn your way around. We don't unlearn these things. We have to learn new ways to do them. So trying new exercises, trying different videos, and staying clear of your upper register for a little while, I think would be very advantageous and would expedite the overall process. Striker at Pro Audio Rev TV. Chris Halbert, hello. Stephen, could you comment on the singer's formant? Is sound in the singer's formant what we perceive of as the brightness? Yes, it is. The singer's formant is an area of pitch. I think of it as EQ. I mean, our voices don't have EQs, right? But we can emphasize certain frequencies over others. Singer's formant is an aspect of mask resonance. Depending on your vocal Fach or range, like baritone, tenor, alto, soprano, it will fall between 2 kilohertz and 5 kilohertz. And it is largely responsible for projection and the brilliance in our voices. Oftentimes, when you have vocalists that are straining, they're trying to emulate that singer's formant, but they're trying to push on the vocal folds to create that brilliance instead of releasing it and allowing the soft tissues to vibrate. So if I sing with it, I've been talking a mile a minute here. Let me have a sip of water before I sing anything. So, if I sing with it, let's sing without. I mean, that's in tune and it's okay, right? It probably sounds a little dead. And now if I start to bring a little bit of it in, it kind of lifts a little bit. And as I bring more in, the sound starts to brighten up even more. And then I can go further with that, which if you're into musical theater is really appropriate. And that really, really helps with projection and intelligibility. Oh, what voice type am I? I'm a tenor. Veronica. Hello, Jeff. Greetings from Veronica. Please feel free to correct my pronunciation. Greetings. Welcome from Argentina. That is so cool. Your Giuseppe at Stryker says thank you. Sophia Lewis, what does it mean to sing with a forward placement? I just demonstrated that. That's what that singer's formant is, that forward placement. While you were gone, I was listening to your music on Spotify. Some interesting stuff out there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, very good. Dzień dobry. Good morning. Awesome. I guess it's good evening for where you are, but it's good morning here. Thank you. Overcomer, good question at Sophia Lewis. Striker Kane retracted. Striker Kane at Sophia. Andrew Curry, what's your background? My background. I'm a lifer as far as musicians go. I went to the University of Michigan, where I studied music performance. My actual my major was in fact saxophone performance. I also studied voice while I was there, and I continued studying voice after I graduated. I've studied with a variety of different people, and it's just been music the whole time. JC's Radiant Ray. Jeff, I have a question similar to another question in the chat. I think it takes me over 2 hours to obtain the engagement release. Any thoughts to shorten this warm-up period? My best voice is after a lesson or an event. It's a bit frustrating. I can dig it. The best way to expedite our warm-ups is to not just warm up the voice, but to warm up the body, and to have a particular focus on warming up the musculature that is our support mechanism. So particularly our expansion and our engagement, so that we're really getting into the body and getting those things engaged and open. More than that, it is, I think, to carefully stage our warm-ups too. If we're immediately jumping into our upper register, that may not necessarily be the most effective way for us to warm up. As your warm-up gets more and more efficient, then jumping directly into full-range singing is a non-issue. It just will go that way over time. But that's such a big question. I think really addressing engagement in the body is the most effective and reliable way to expedite our warm-ups. Sophilos, how do musical theater singers make their mixed voice sound so chesty? Well, for one, a lot of times they're belting. In the musical theater genre, a certain amount of belting is to be expected, and so they may be belting at that point. Two, those who refine their technique over the secondo passaggio will have great resonance that matches their chest voices. So it's a continuity of one thing and another. It's a chicken and the egg. I guess that's going to be a phrase for today too. They're both made to match. So the chest voice is matching the head voice, and the head voice is matching the chest. In other words, they are. There can be a propensity to really press into our chest voices, and if we do that, then we get a great disparity when we make a transition to our upper register. By not pressing so hard on the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, we get a smoother transition, and so the continuity is much easier to obtain. Matthias, love your channel. Thanks. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Mrs. Webster, thank you. So glad to have been here to learn, encourage, and to visit. Very grateful to all. Please continue to discuss the Facebook group. Yes, I forget about Sequencer, and I have to go there, and if anyone's sent a request, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go on there and make sure I okay all the people that want to get on there. Guys, got to wrap it up. I've really got to wrap it up. So sorry. There's so many questions. Watching your video for a while. I'm finally catching one of these live office hours. Really appreciate the work you do and the knowledge. Thank you so much, Divya. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Just scanning ahead. I feel my voice is most free once I do the NG to A exercise. Can you talk about what's going on there and how I can channel that freeness without depending on the NG? Yeah, okay. So shortcut. The way to get the freeness without doing the NG is to really, really try to become as aware as you can of how the tongue is oriented and how your voice is operating when you release to the ah, and then do your tonal onset trying to achieve that same sound. That's a very short answer, and the process can take a lot of time. Not a lot of time, but a bit of time. But you really have to clue into the physical experience of what that ah feels like and the alignment of that ah vowel after you release from the NG. Noticing all the different resonators opening in the release around it. And also your airflow too. Michael, welcome. Mongolian throat singing, not really. You have to talk to Seth about that. An acquaintance here of mine in the Bay Area who could talk to you about that. Gray background with right lighting and flesh-colored shirt. Thank you, Striker. Gray background. Okay, I have lights and a flesh-colored shirt. Okay. Try the Doppler effect shirt from Big Bang. Thank you, Jeff. Everybody, thank you so much. I know, Michael, I need to get back on the How to Sing series. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much. The class about passaggio is coming up. That's one of the reasons why I'm getting the piano tune. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. And if I didn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. But thank you very much. Hopefully we can get you next week. Bye, everybody. Singing, and if I didn't get your question, I'm so sorry, but thank you very much. Hopefully we can get you next week. Bye, everybody.